Hey everybody, I'm Tim Mooney with the Timothy Mooney Repertory Theater. So today, I'm taking on another of the many famous speeches in Hamlet. While last time around we focused on the most famous speech of all time, To Be or Not To Be, you can check that one out here, I've decided to go back to the start of this play and work my way through the major Hamlet soliloquies in the order that they happen in the play, which means that today we're going to dive in with one of my favorites from Act 1, Scene 2. Two Solid Flesh. I perform Two Solid Flesh as part of my one-man play, Breakneck Hamlet, which I'll be performing live online Sunday and Monday, December 13th and 14th, 2020 at 8 p.m. Central Time. You can catch it as a pay whatever you want event on Facebook Live on Sunday and for just $5 on Zoom on Monday. My plan here is to shine just a little more light on this great speech, and if you get something out of this, please do me a favor and hit that little thumbs up icon or subscribe to this channel for more. So here's I Finally Get Two Solid Flesh. First of all, as complicated as Shakespeare seems to be, you really only need to understand 5 plot points to get what's going on with Hamlet in this speech. Put yourself in Hamlet's shoes as you contemplate 1. Dad has died rather recently. Dad died under somewhat suspicious circumstances. Mom remarried. She remarried very quickly after Dad's death. And 5, the man she remarried is Dad's brother, my uncle. Now, I expect there are immediate emotional responses that come up for you. Some will feel confusion, uncertainty, upset, anger, envy, distrust, and a wide variety of disturbances along that line. Under all of that, what may take a little time to acknowledge and admit is the general, what we call icky factor, the grotesque weirdness when one contemplates one's mother and one's uncle in a relationship. It's best not to overlook that one as you consider this. That's probably enough to personalize this scene for you as it is, but there's one more factor you might be overlooking. Given that you yourself are not a prince, we assume, when your uncle stepped in as your new dad, he also intercepted your inheritance. And the inheritance of an only child prince is the kingship. Shakespeare spends almost no time spelling this out because he assumes that his audience already knows about it. In the same way, an American generally doesn't need to explain to another American how the Electoral College works. And yet, our friends up in Canada find it rather bewildering. A prince is already in an awkward position. He spends his years readying himself to become king, but he is not allowed to look forward to that event. At least, he is not allowed to be seen looking forward to it. In those days, it was essentially illegal to even be caught thinking of the death of a king, much less to hope for it. So one must revere one's parent while anticipating one's future in a manner that is not too noticeably eager. Consider the position in which Prince Charles has been over the course of all of the last 72 years of his life, even as his mother, Queen Elizabeth, approaches the age of 95. But Hamlet was away attending school in Wittenburg, some 300 miles south of Denmark, when his father died. Obviously, with no technology, no way of receiving a message, then for someone to jump onto a horse and, once they've navigated over the Baltic Sea between Denmark and Germany, to ride south over the remaining distance. We're talking some 7 to 10 days traveling south and another 7 to 10 days back north. The time could be shortened if the rider hires fresh horses along the way, but we don't actually know who was paying the messenger and just how quickly or slowly that person actually wanted to get Hamlet back home. But it's probably at least 15 to 20 days between father's death and son's return. Things happened fast over the course of those 15 to 20 days. Those days gave elder Hamlet's younger brother, Claudius, enough time to fall in love with Queen Gertrude, and Gertrude with him. They were already in love, but they had been keeping it secret, which meant that they had to suddenly discover just how very in love they were in very short order. And they got engaged. And their sudden engagement inspired the various powers behind the throne We assume they had something equivalent to a parliament to decide, hey, here's an idea, let's just make Claudius king. He's an adult, kind of, already politically savvy, and he had been next in line anyway until Hamlet Jr. came along, and given that he and Gertrude are in love already, we won't have to switch out queens, so there'll be a smooth transition. That's pretty much how it had to have happened. Isaac Asimov notes in his terrific book, Asimov's Guide to Shakespeare, Hamlet is not speaking this soliloquy so much through a Freudian lens with some sort of jealous love for his mother. What really upsets him here is that he had the kingship stolen out from under him. And the reason it was there for the stealing is because everything happened so fast. So while the incestuousness of this all nags at him and eats away at him, what really bugs him is the speed with which that incest took place. With all of that in mind, I like to think of this speech, one of the great speeches in all of Shakespeare, as a musical symphony, or perhaps, since it comes up so early in the play, an overture. I've plotted the speech out with colors that may reveal the changing temperature of the speech. If we want to continue our symphony metaphor, we might imagine these as shifting movements or different instruments taking up the theme. These are largely arbitrary choices as to precisely where Hamlet shifts from one attitude to the next, but he is clearly moving from some sort of cold, soft, and quiet attitude on up to anger, fury, and rage in an impassioned climax which is followed by a sudden denouement and resolution in just the last 2 lines of the speech. You can almost feel the shift of his tone in the very vowels and consonants that Shakespeare gives Hamlet to express along the way. We start out with Hamlet in a state of depression. He's in mourning for his father and probably for the loss of his kingship. He's already contemplating death and suicide or self-slaughter. Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew, or that the everlasting had not fixed his canon against self-slaughter. Oh, God, God! He turns to his resentment of the world at large. All he can see is tangled chaos. Where once there was order and righteousness, there is now anarchy. How weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of this world. Fie on't, ah, fie! 'Tis an unweeded garden that grows to seed. Things rank and gross in nature possess it merely. He has been trying to blame the structure of the world, the chaos of society, but more specifically, his entire social order had been determined by his father's great leadership. Now it is descended to the lesser of 2 brothers. Hamlet may be forgiven if, in the wake of all this, he has put his father up on a pedestal, calling him a Hyperion, essentially the god of the sun, and putting his uncle down among the monsters, calling him a satyr, a hyper-sexualized half-man, half-goat. Also, you'll want to listen as Hamlet begins to introduce the question of just how fast all of this went down. That it should come to this, but 2 months dead, nay, not so much, not 2. So excellent a king that was to this, Hyperion to a satyr. So loving to my mother that he might not beteem the winds of heaven visit her face too roughly. And then memories of his father turn his thoughts to his mother's great fondness and love, at least from back in the happier days. These thoughts of former happiness and sudden sharp turns of fate torment him to the point that he wishes he could stop fixing on it. Heaven and earth, must I remember? Why, she would hang on him as if increase of appetite had grown by what it fed on, and yet within a month, let me not think on't. He strikes back with an attack on his mother that is an attack on all of womankind. The shoes with which they adorn their feet, the tears that they hide behind. Frailty, thy name is woman. A little month or ere those shoes were old with which she followed my poor father's body, like Niobe all tears. Why, she, even she. And what is it that those tears are hiding? Bestial desire. which contains no thought, no power of discretion, no ability of discernment to separate one man from another, to see the difference between a common, unattractive schlub of a man and a mighty warrior king. O God, a beast that once discourse of reason would have mourned longer, married with my uncle, my father's brother, but no more like my father than I to Hercules. And even in the light of all these inadequacies, Gertrude turned from what had to have been those phony put upon tears and red eyes to jump headlong into another marriage. Within a month, ere yet the salt of most unrighteous tears had left the flushing in her galled eyes, she married. And finally, the collective spiral of disgust, anger, envy, resentment furiously climaxes with one of the most difficult lines in all of Shakespeare. A line that not only expresses the extent of the disgust of the very physical, animal, repugnant, sexual act he hates to imagine, but that in the very process of speaking forces Hamlet's mouth into a grotesque tangle of furious tension. Those words in themselves forcing the very muscles that Hamlet uses into a screaming sneer of horror and disgust. And in doing so, he releases everything that he has left and everything that he has been holding back. O most wicked speed to post with such dexterity two incestuous sheets! And so, having released all that he had within, Hamlet climbs back down from his great climax with only 2 lines of iambic pentameter remaining in this speech. When Shakespeare wants to slow down the rate of speech, he reduces and/or eliminates multisyllabic words, and even more, he chooses words with hard consonant endings, so that in these final 2 lines, those 20 syllables feature 20 single-syllable words. And of those 20 words, 16 of them have consonant endings, which function as if you were pulling a car with a set of rusty brakes up to a stop sign as it stops the car. It is not, nor it cannot come to good, but break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. And so, the overture comes to a close as Hamlet spans the range of emotions from despair to anger to disgust and fury and resolution. By now, we know that we are following a capable, intelligent, richly emotional, and vivid character who has only begun to carry us along through the height and breadth of expression. This speech actually forms the basis of one of my most popular acting exercises, which is described at some great length in my acting textbook, Acting at the Speed of Life, Conquering Theatrical Style. You can get copies of that through my website or through our Patreon campaign. If you'd like to see this whole speech without the interruptions of my play-by-play, you can catch it as part of Breakneck Hamlet this Sunday and Monday, December 13th and 14th, 2020 at 8 p.m. Central. If you're watching this video after that date, please swing by timmooneyRep.com for all the latest details of the performance schedule or to book an event for your own school, theater, or conference in person or via the internet. So that's I finally get to solid flesh. Hopefully your understanding of this will double your appreciation of this speech and open the door to better understand the full play. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like and subscribe to this channel for more. I do these explainer videos just about every week, releasing them on Friday in advance of the coming shows. You can go back and see the first one that I did on Hamlet here, and more clips and scenes from Breakneck Hamlet here. We've also got a Patreon campaign. If you'd like to support this work, we are a not-for-profit institution at patreon.com/TimMooneyRep. We have giveaways of lots of merch, like these books, for instance, and drawings for free performances. And this and lots more goodies can be found at timmooneyRep.com. Thanks for watching. See you on the stage.